Today is Saturday, August 15th, 2020. And, my name, Virginia Espino, I'm interviewing Evelia for Labor Studies Voces of a Pandemic Story Collection Project. This is a collaborative project between UCLA and Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. So, Evelia, I just want you to know that this interview, once it's completed, will be placed on the Digital Public Library of America, and it will also be shared with Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there's anything that you don't want to answer, if you feel uncomfortable with some of my questions, I will definitely honor your wishes and not continue with the interview or with those questions, that line of questioning. But I don't think I'll ask you anything too private. Also, if there's something that you want to discuss that I haven't brought up, something that's important to you that didn't come up in our conversation, please make sure to bring it up, and I'd be happy to talk about it with you. Since we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting to be interviewed. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree after each one. Because if you don't agree to make this video public, then there's not a huge point in interviewing. I'll continue the interview, but it won't go to Texas, to Voces Oral History Center, because they want all of these interviews to be publicly available. But I'll definitely continue to conduct the interview. It just won't go to them. UCLA Labor Studies wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs or documentation that you might have on the Digital Public Library of America. UCLA Labor Studies will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials that you donate to UCLA Labor Studies. So if you have any photographs or any video that you've taken of yourself wearing a mask or working, we're collecting that kind of documentation as well. So for example, I have a picture of when we took our first COVID test. Those kinds of things would make your story, more interesting as a whole.
Okay.
So UCLA Labor Studies and the Digital Public Library of America will make those available, but copyright will go to UCLA. So here are my questions. First one, do you give UCLA Labor Studies consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Digital Public Library of America?
Yes, I do.
Do you grant UCLA Labor Studies right, title, and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials that you provide?
Yes.
So that it belongs to them. If you give them copyright, it's still your interview, but they'll make it available. That's how they are able to make it available to the public.
To the public. I understand.
Do you agree to allow UCLA Labor Studies and the Digital Public Library of America to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Can we rewind where I'm wiping my face?
Okay. I can't rewind, but maybe, I don't know. I don't know if I could play with it before I turn it in. But yeah. It's hot, and it doesn't look strange that you're wiping your face. In fact, kind of punctuates this moment that we're in right now. It's like one of the hottest days that we've had in a long time in California. Yes. So makes sense that you be wiping your face. I am sitting under the air conditioning, and that's why I'm not wiping my face. Okay, let's see. So the third question was, do you agree to allow UCLA Labor Studies and the Digital Public Library of America to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes.
Do you grant UCLA Labor Studies consent to share your interview and your materials with Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voces of a Pandemic Oral History Mini Project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. So we have an online questionnaire that we're going to do after the interview. And once I stop recording, we have an online questionnaire that's demographic information, like, for example, your birth date, etc., that I'm not going to ask you while we're recording. And those questions are going to be kept in a private database.
Mhm.
And they want to know if in the future you would be willing to make this information public, or if you want to keep it private. So like your birth date, where you were born, how many sisters and brothers you have, that kind of thing.
So that I could keep public if I want. I mean private.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So when, yes, all that stuff will be private. Unless you wanted to make, unless you want to make it public. So do you wish to share the rest of your interview in your public file to researchers who go to the Benson Library at UT Austin? So Voces of a Pandemic collects all of these interviews, makes many of them available to the public, but all the information that they collect that's not on the internet is housed in their library. So all the information that is connected to your interview can either be made public or could be kept private. But you said that you wanted it to be kept private, if I
Yeah.
understood you correctly. Okay, so
Yeah.
no, that's a no.
That's a no.
Okay, on occasion that UCLA Labor Studies and Voces receives requests from journalists who wish to contact their interview subjects, do you agree or do you give consent for Voces or UCLA to provide your name, your contact information in case media wants to further interview you about your experience?
Yes.
Okay. Might probably, it's on
They probably
occasion.
won't get contacted.
But maybe, who knows? Okay, so great. So that's it. Sorry, that's a little bit, it's my first time reading it, so it was a little bit awkward. Okay, here we go. So this is more of a story collection. So anything that you can tell me that describes an experience, or if you can give me a story or an example, that would be really helpful. Rather than a simple yes or no answer. But we'll work through this questionnaire, and right now it's 2:18, so I probably won't take more than 40 minutes of your time.
Okay.
Although I have about 100 questions, we're probably not going to get to all of them.
All right.
So question one, so tell me about one thing that brings you joy right now.
One thing that brings me joy. Gee, that's a tough one with this pandemic. I didn't know we were, okay. I think the one thing that I look forward to during this pandemic, because just a little bit of background, I live alone. So my contact with people is very limited. And the only contact I have with people right now is through Zoom or when I go to the grocery store. So I never thought I'd say this, but there's some joy in going to the grocery store.
I love it. I love it. That's a great answer. So yeah, that first question is kind of like an icebreaker to kind of break the ice so that I'm just not in, like, with the pandemic. Is there anything that you kind of mentioned that you live alone, but is there anything else that you think I should know before we begin? Before I get to the nitty gritty?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So how do you identify yourself? As Latina, Latinx, Latino, Chicana, Hispanic, Mexican American?
Well, in my family, I'm Mexican. On paper, I'm Latina. At work, I'm either Latina or Mexican American.
That's interesting. So how come with your family you're Mexican? Can you elaborate on that?
Because with my family, I was born in Mexico, immigrated to the US, and my parents are first generation Mexicans. And when I came home from college talking about being a Chicana, Latina, they were not having it. My mom saw it as a bad thing, so she didn't like me to talk about it. So in family, I'm Mexican.
And what term do you feel most comfortable with when you're when you're with your friends, with your peers?
When I'm with peers, well, when people ask me what am I say I'm Mexican, and I feel comfortable in that.
Great.
And also, I guess when I'm with friends that I've gone to school with, I feel like I can be comfortable in saying I'm a Chicana.
Cool. So you mentioned where you're originally from and Mexico. And can you tell me where you live now?
I live in San Jose, California.
And do you remember, or can you walk me through a day before COVID? So what would be a typical, like today's Saturday, what would be a typical Saturday like for you if we weren't in a quarantine?
If we weren't in quarantine, I would probably have some plans with some friends, probably, or travel down to Southern California where my family lives, visit them for the weekend, or visit friends up here in the area. Since COVID, I can't do much of that anymore. And luckily, I do have a friend that lives nearby, so I'm able to go out for walks with that friend. But with family, it's been very, very challenging.
Yeah, I suspect you miss your social networks, especially since you live alone. So what would be a typical day, work day look like? If,
Uh,
for example, if this was Monday or Tuesday.
so if it was Monday or Tuesday, I would normally drive into work. I start at 9:30, work all day until 6:30, then get home around that time, dinner time, relax, and then start the next day all over again.
And can you describe who you work for? Can you tell me who you work for right now and what your job title is?
Yeah, I work for Santa Clara County Social Services. I am a social worker. My title with the county right now, I'm a social services analyst, and I do that. I'm a support for the department, so I facilitate meetings for families, child family team meetings, and that's my main role. I'm lucky in that there's a unit of us, 10 of us that do that job, and we don't have to go out into the field. So we support social workers that do go out into the field in addressing concerns that are presented to the department, like when children are abused or neglected and the department has to intervene. I facilitate those type of meetings to come to a safety plan for the families and the children.
So would you say you're in middle management?
Well, I'm not a supervisor, but
Okay.
I guess I am kind of in middle management. I do have a supervisor, and I'm kind of a middle manager, I guess, because I am like a coach to the social workers. When I do the meetings, I need to know I did that job as a social worker, as a field worker, so I know what it entails, and then I can support the social worker that brings the meeting to the table.
So do you remember when you first heard about COVID-19?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I didn't take it very seriously when I first heard about it. Uh, I, I heard that it was in China. I thought that's really far away. It's not going to come here. and and as the time went on, I actually was on a vacation. I went on a trip to Mexico with some friends, and we were hearing more and more about it there. And we were starting to hear that it was getting spread throughout the world, and that they were going to start limiting travel to and from other countries. So, and I was in Mexico at the time, so I was like, oh well, hopefully I'll get home before any of that starts to happen. And this was in March when I started to hear about it, and it was like more, it was more on my radar of something more serious that's happening. So, but like I said, I really didn't think it was going to be such a big deal. So I was on that trip at the beginning of March. And I remember the day that we got back to work from my vacation, that week, that same, I think, or a week and a half that I got back, March 14th, they shut down our work. We got a memo. We got told that everybody had to go home. There was COVID, and we could not go back to the office.
March 14th.
So, yeah, March 14th.
And what dates were you in Mexico?
And I was in Mexico like the beginning of March. Like I can't remember the exact dates, but like the first weekend in March, like the 7th, March 7th, around there is what I'm remembering. And then I came back to work like March 9th or 10th. And then I worked in the office a few days. And then that week, Friday, we were told that not to come back to the office, or we had to leave like that day. It was almost 5 o'clock, around 5 o'clock when we got that message. So it just gave me time to get my laptop and make sure I had something to work with for the following week, and then started working from home that week. Actually, I still went into work and did a few meetings that next week, because I didn't have, I hadn't arranged my space, and I didn't know how to facilitate my meetings without going into the office, because that's the way we do it. Go into the office, and you have 5 or 10 people in a room, and I'm the facilitator. So, and then trying to get everybody on the phone. But there was so much to learn in the beginning, how to do everything remotely, how to do everything through Zoom. So it was very chaotic, or it felt chaotic. I mean, I did manage to do the meetings that I had to do, and managed to keep working. Because I'm sure a lot of people weren't able to work. We were designated essential workers because we're social workers and we serve the public. So I managed to, but all my coworkers were like, "You don't go into work. What are you, crazy? You're gonna get COVID." So I did switch over to doing everything by audio. We have Skype, which is a program through video. It's audio and video, so you can do your meetings through, and you can have unlimited number. I'm not sure up to how many people you can have on the line, but you can have a large number. And sometimes we have like 15 to 20 participants on our phone calls. So we need a program that has that capability. So that was essential for us to continue to serve the department and the families that we work with. So
Wow. So can you describe a typical meeting before COVID? Because I'm having like I can't, can you paint me a picture? I'm not really sure what that looks like.
yeah, so yeah, I know without you knowing what I do, it's kind of hard. Yeah, so typically what I do is we have a social worker from the department who will refer to us that there's and we have a variety of different reasons we have meetings for. One meeting can be about placement. One meeting is that they're trying to decide if a child's going to be removed, or they pretty much already decided that the child will be removed, and we need to figure out where the child is going to live. And if there are family members available, in order to place the child with a family member while the parent receives services in order to reunify with their child. So basically, I work with Child Protective Services with CPS. And then whenever we intervene, we try to keep the children first with their family, but when that's not possible, then we do have to plan. And the the laws do say that we have to include the family in the process, and we have to give the family an option in what will happen to their child. If it's unsafe to return them home, or for them, if they're going to be at risk of, basically death or harm, then we have to intervene. So then a social worker will refer the situation to me or to our department, and then we get assigned. One of us gets assigned, and I'm Spanish speaking, so I work with the Spanish speaking families, also with the English, but I'm designated Spanish, so I get a lot of the Spanish speaking families. So typically, let's say if a child comes into care and the social worker refers them, and then let me give you an example of a Spanish speaking family, and their child, and they may have, let's say they have 4 children. So, and maybe they have a grandmother, an aunt, an uncle, and maybe only grandmother is able, or grandmother and uncle want to provide placement. They come to the meeting. So the family is told to please invite whoever they want in the meeting to support them, so they get in. So the family invites their people, and then the department has a social worker that works just with placement. So then that person would be invited to the meeting, and then sometimes there's requirements that the family has to meet in order to provide housing for the child. Like, they have to go through a series of legal paperwork that we have to do. They have to do fingerprints, criminal background clearance, and it's a whole very extensive process. So that the criteria they have to meet in order to have the child in their home. So so then that person that explains all those requirements to the family comes to the meeting. So it's and then it's the social worker that referred the family, and then they have a supervisor. So then their supervisor, we like the supervisor to come to the meeting because they guide the social worker. Like, and unless the social worker doesn't need guidance, more experienced social workers tend to not bring their supervisor, but less experienced social workers will bring their supervisor. And then if it's, and then they have, the children have an attorney assigned. So then that social worker attorney is allowed to come to the meeting. We don't allow attorneys normally, but we do want somebody to represent the child. And it's usually a social worker that works with the attorney. So then they get invited to the meeting. And then Who else? And then any other people that are working with the family get invited to the meeting. Say the child had already been enrolled with a therapist, and the family feels comfortable inviting their therapist. They can invite the therapist. Say they have a priest that they work with, and they go to a church, and that's their support. Then they can invite that person, or they have a good friend that has been helpful to them, or provides childcare for them, or the school teacher, say they have a relationship with a teacher, they can invite anyone in their circle of support to the meeting. So that's why I say we can have like up to 5 to 10 people coming to the meeting at once, because the family really we encourage them to invite their circle of support.
Yeah,
And we want
it sounds like
go ahead.
everyone has their ally. The child has their ally, could be a lawyer. The social worker has their ally, could be their supervisor. The family has their allies, and it could be a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. So it could potentially be a lot of people in the room.
It sounds like
Um,
such an important process for coming to a resolution that serves the whole family, especially the child who might be in danger.
yes, yes.
So, do you have an example of how that has changed, that process has changed after you were no longer allowed to go back to the office to hold these meetings?
So we've been fortunate in that we can still hold the meetings, but so our core practice of inviting everybody that I talked about, and that we still have that in place. But what has changed is that we can't hold them in person because of COVID. If you're holding a meeting with like what the CDC regulation is saying, that no more than 5 people or 10 people is too much. So that interferes with our process. So we have to hold it over video, or by telephone conference, or video conference, so that we can still provide that service for the family. But we just will, that way we do it safely, and we're not exposing anybody to COVID, or potentially exposing ourselves to COVID, because we don't know if one of our clients is carrying it, the asymptomatic concern. I mean, we could be walking around exposing other people. So that has changed, that we can't do it in person. And that kind of interferes with our process too sometimes, right? Because when you facilitate in person, you can tell how a person is reacting. You can tell if a person is getting emotional, if they need a break. And over the phone, it's a little bit more challenging to hear those cues. You can't you can hear sometimes when parents are getting agitated, maybe their voice is raising, or maybe they're saying something inappropriate. But so that's, you have to become more I guess a better listener in trying to pick out the cues, so that I can intervene and just keep the conversation going. Because I'm the facilitator. I'm the one that's supposed to kind of like a peacemaker, make sure that everybody is getting their point across, but doing it in a peaceful manner, so that we can develop a plan for the family.
So what does, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I don't know if that answers your question, or if just
Yeah,
gone on.
that's heavy stuff, Evelia. That's heavy stuff when you think about those physical cues that tell you a lot about somebody when you're making a decision about a child's safety, or separating them from their family, which could be, very detrimental. So so I have a couple of questions, and one is uh So when you think about this as a pandemic, is that influencing how you, whether or not the committee decides to separate the child and put them in a different family, or is it more leaning towards keeping the child with their family because of the spread of COVID?
Well, what guides us is the Welfare and Institutions Code. So and usually when they come to the table, the decision usually has already been made. It's rare in the meeting where I have the social worker, well, in emergency response, they do come in with that situation where they're deciding, although those situations are rare. Most of the time, I have meetings where the family has already experienced that removal, and we're just planning on how to reunify the child with the family. And like I mentioned, one of the reasons is placement. Another reason could be case plan services, like to review case plan services. Another reason we have our meetings is to mitigate any issues that are happening for the child. Like sometimes there's placement disruptions where the child and the caregiver aren't getting along, and the caregiver is saying, or there's been issues for the caregiver, right? That she's no longer able to care for the child, and we have to look and see if there's another placement for the child. And placement is a really challenging topic because placements are rare. There's not a lot of people that open their, foster parents are, we're constantly recruiting, trying to maintain foster parents. And then with COVID, that's even been a bigger challenge, because who wants to have a brand new child in their home? They don't know if the child could potentially be carrying COVID, and then they're gonna allow them into their home. And if there's family members in their home that have health issues, they're even more hesitant to allow a new foster child into the home. And then the foster kids they're traumatized. They've experienced physical abuse, neglect, sexual abuse. There's the Welfare and Institutions Codes A through G. So all the different reasons that we intervene, a child may experience one or two of those, or maybe 3 or 4 of those. I mean, we have so many, unfortunately, so many different reasons why children come into the system. So remind me, I don't know if I'm going off tangent or if I'm answering your question.
No, this is really powerful, and it's very impactful. You're not going off on a tangent, because my question was about how has COVID impacted the kinds of decisions that are taking place now in your department as a social worker, and you're saying that it does impact, because of the foster care system, because it's hard to place a kid when they need to be placed. So I don't know if you can give any examples of like a scenario that's taking place just because of COVID. Like what kind of evidence can you give me that COVID is impacting the work that you're doing, aside from just you have to do things remotely? Are there other ways that COVID's impacting your work?
Well, one of the things that I hear in our meetings is so when children are removed from their family, they need visitation. And visitation's another reason why we hold meetings. And so when the governor shut down in March, and everybody had to work from home, that meant that children and families could not have in-person visits, because in-person visits are supervised visits. And if an in-person So the social worker, it's usually a social worker one that will supervise the visit, and I used to do that when I first started. I used to supervise visits, and they last from an hour to 2 hours. And if the parent has to be supervised, then you can't you can't supervise it during COVID. So for a lot of parents, that made a huge impact, because then statistically, and for a parent to reunify with their child, that the research shows that the more time that you give parents time with their child, the more likely they're going to be successful in their reunification services and reunify with their child. And now here comes COVID, and actually I did have a meeting where the father had earned his unsupervised visit. He had gone through all his services and he was ready to go unsupervised, and COVID happens and he could not, his unsupervised visit got canceled, and he could not have it because of COVID. And now he's having his services terminated because there was no progress made in the visits, and the social worker could not document what progress was made, what positive progress was made in the visit. He only had video phone calls, and the child is young, so the child would like, oh, I don't want to, I'll talk to you later, Dad. So he didn't want to stay on the video call with his dad, which is normal, typical for a child his age. I think he was 9 years old. And but that impacted the dad's case. Now he's not going to be able to reunify with his child because he can't demonstrate that he learned anything, and demonstrate that he has a bond and that his child wants to reunify with him. Now his son is saying that he'd rather stay in the foster home. So COVID definitely impacted their visit and their ability to reunify. A very, very sad case.
That sounds tragic.
The dad is, I'm sure it's going to be set for trial, and he's still trying to fight for his son. So hopefully he will continue to do that. But
so the system isn't changing its regulations for cases like that? They still have to meet those same criteria as pre-COVID?
The parents still have to do their services to the best of their ability while COVID is happening. They're still, they can access services remotely. So they still can attend, like, for example, some of our clients are dealing with substance abuse. They can go online and do NA meetings online. Some of our parents need parenting classes, and those are being offered online by video or by telephone. They can do their therapies. The county is offering telehealth, so they can still do that. They just have to find a way. There's still services that are happening, and the parents still have to comply with those. And then the department, if the department feels like there's, because I talked to the social workers that are doing the case managing, if they feel like the parent needs to do a drug test, they'll go to their home and they'll request a non-demand drug test. And then we offer drug testing, and they have to call a site. For a while it was closed and the parents didn't have to go drug test in person because of COVID, but then they had to keep calling to just demonstrate that they're still maintaining their sobriety, because there's got to be some way to track it. There has to be some tracking system, otherwise we can't you know, we can't say that the child's going to be safe going back to that parent.
Wow. So since we've talked before, on our initial talk, we talked about how some of the families that you work with don't have internet. Would you say that's a large percentage of the families that you've been in contact with, that they have difficulty? Like you say, there's opportunities for them to access AA meetings and therapy, etc. But what if they don't have access to the internet or have a cell phone or a computer?
Yeah. I think I don't know the data on that. I don't know how many of our clients don't have internet, but I know some of them say they don't have internet, and they ask us, where can we get internet? And where do we I did hear, so it's all like, sometimes it's just like a social worker has this resource and then we pass it on in the meeting, or some of the community-based agencies that we work with, we ask them to support the family. How can they get internet at home? Sometimes the schools are offering the internet through the computers. They do the hotspots, and it's a matter of the parent asking for the service. And I know some of the internet providers provide the low income prices so that everybody can have access. I know it's a challenge though. Some of our Latino community members are sometimes embarrassed to ask, or don't even know to ask about it. So then until they're being told, you got to do this, and then they got to figure out how to do it. You got to do these parenting classes online, or the NA meetings, or whatever it is, you know. But somehow a lot of them are on social media, so they got to figure they know how to do that.
They know how to get on Facebook. Maybe they know how to get to their AA meeting.
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's really heavy stuff, Evelia, that you're dealing with on the day to day. And I know that you used to actually do those home visits, and so you're not doing that anymore. But I'm wondering, I don't know if you could talk about your employer. You know, how do you think they prepared you to go remote that first week? You mentioned that it was a little awkward. You didn't know how to hold your meetings, and so you went into work and people were telling you, you know, don't
Don't
do
go to
it.
work. Yeah. Well, they didn't. It's kind of like so the resources that I had at my desk, that's what I had to bring home and to work with at home. So they did provide us with a laptop, and then I did remember struggling in the beginning with the ergonomic setup, and I kept asking, like, does the county help us with the ergonomic setup? I'm like having pain, and but they said it was our responsibility, so we had to figure it out. So I had to figure out how to set up my desk, my area at home, and how to finally I went in one day after, so when it all got shut down, beginning of March, well, March 14th, and then April, we went through April, and then April and May, by the end of May, I was like, I cannot work like this, because I just had my laptop and the little screen. I'm older. I'm aging. I can't see little writing anymore, and I needed my reading glasses. I wear contacts, so it was getting challenging, and just sitting and trying to do my work on the little laptop, and then I have to write up a plan, and then I have to send it to everybody, and it was just getting too much. So I think it was like by the end of May that I went in and I got my actual computer from my desk at work. And they were allowing us to do that. They said, as long as we let them know what we have, and we could take it home and do our work from home. Telework is what it's called. So that's what I'm doing.
So as far, sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, I had to figure out how to set it up myself, and luckily I had a chair that a friend had given me a while back that kind of is adjustable, so I can raise it or lower it. And then I set up my computer on my dining table because I have limited space, and that's where I do my work. And I have a little smaller table connected to that where I put my keyboard.
So there was no budget for you to purchase anything like a chair?
No. Everything that if I want to purchase, if I need anything extra, I would have to get it myself. And then I asked about printing because sometimes I want to print so that I can read and type. They won't. The printing would have to come out of my budget. So I decided just to go in and print when I needed to print.
So you are still going into the office?
I go in on occasion, but there's very few people in the office, and they are cleaning. And we do have a protocol when we go into the office. We have to have our mask on. We have to have the hand sanitizer. They have hand sanitizer in all the areas. So, and there are still workers that are doing the field work, going out and doing investigations, and they have to see their clients once a month. They're still going into the office and they doing their work at their desk. Not everybody has the capability to just do it from home. So I consider myself lucky that I can do it from home.
So you have the option then to go into the office if you wanted to.
If I wanted to, I could be in the office, but I just can't see myself sitting there with a mask all day long doing my work, because that's what it would entail, having to use the mask. And only if you're talking on the phone, you could take your mask off. So I just, since I have the ability to do it at home, I'm just doing it from home.
So in comparing your employer to you're a part of a union, correct?
Yes.
So can you tell me about your union? I guess this will be, because it's approaching 3 and I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I still have to answer those other questions on the questionnaire. But can you tell me what your union, the name of your union, and if they have played a role in giving you information or advocating for you in any way over this past few months?
Our union is SEIU 5.
2-1?
It changed a couple of years ago. The number, I think it's 5. I'm with since I got the promotion, I'm 535, the supervisors chapter. So SEIU. And so before COVID happened, I was very involved with the union because we were fighting a contract. Our contract had expired, and we were advocating for raises. And then once we were lucky to have that contract settled before COVID happened. I'm just like so grateful that we settled a contract before COVID, because I can't imagine trying to advocate for a contract during COVID, going on marches and protesting. But after COVID, I've seen a lot of information from the union about advocating for workers, but mostly it's for the hospital workers. that I've seen the information about. I haven't seen too much for like the social workers, and I haven't reached out to them really.
So are you in a different union than, say, somebody who goes out into the field?
Mhm.
Did your union change when
No.
you got the promotion?
Oh yeah, it changed because now well, it's still the same union as CIU, just a different chapter, 535.
Or local?
Yeah, or local. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have, are you in a position where you're advising those individuals who go out into the field? Or is that something separate?
That's they have supervisors who they yeah. I don't advise them about their work in the field. I just do the meetings when they refer the families, the child family team meetings.
And have you experienced anybody within your work environment getting sick, getting COVID?
I not personally, but I did talk to a worker who said they got exposed to COVID and they had to quarantine for 14 days. And but that worker came back to work and is back at work like normal. We do get memos like, oh, somebody at this office on the second floor had COVID. So if you were anywhere near there, you might have been exposed. And they do they do contract tracing. So they call those people that may have been in the vicinity with that person that tested positive, and then they are supposed to quarantine. Knock on wood, I haven't been exposed.
Definitely, definitely. So how would you rate your employer? You said it was San Jose County that
So
you're
no, yeah, Santa Clara County.
Santa Clara County. Oh. How would you rate their response to this pandemic?
So, yeah, I guess I'm just talking about Department of Family and Children Services. I guess from a 1 to 10, I would give them an 8. I think they've responded pretty responsibly and have tried to maintain everybody safe as they can.
Yeah, that's good. Do you have any recommendations? Like, if you could talk to the person responsible for all of Santa Clara County Welfare Department, what would you ask for during this time?
Hmm. That's a good question. I'm not sure what I would ask for. I think I just would ask that they continue to be fair and equitable with everybody that they serve to the best of their ability. Because sometimes we see inequities. I think they're not as highlighted now because I feel like I'm in a bubble. I'm just in my cubicle here at home when you're in the office it's different. You hear conversations about this from the pod next to you, or people are approaching you, and things word gets around more quickly than it does like in this situation. So I can't say that I heard that. We have like a weekly call-ins about updates about COVID. So our management is really good about maintaining us, keeping us informed about the latest information about COVID. So they're pretty good about that.
Oh, that's good. For the employees, do you think that this children are being served, or do you think there's a better way to serve them during this time?
Well, as far as the the parents that are in reunification, I don't think they're being served because they're not able to see their kids in person. And that's been the hardest thing to hear, that the parents can't see their kids and can't have their, like the client that I had, that he didn't get to have his unsupervised visits. And now the child is saying, I don't want to see him. I want to stay in the foster home. I mean, that just breaks my heart. It's like, with to no fault of the dad, because he did what he needed to do. And to terminate services. I mean, there was some concerns about his behavior, the dad's behavior, during a visit, and that caused the child to say that. And it triggered the child emotionally too, because of the past experience with his father. So, I mean, I see reasons why the recommendation is what it is, but I don't know if it would have happened if COVID hadn't happened and if the kid would have been able to see his dad. So it's a very, very challenging time for those parents that are receiving reunification services.
Right. If he would have had more opportunities to bond and to develop a new relationship with his child, in this case, yeah, that sounds really, really, really sad. So do you have any ideas of what the first thing you're going to do is or before that, are they offering you any information about when your work life will go back to normal? Like, what is the word coming from your supervisors?
Our supervisors I feel like they're trying to normalize what's happening now. They're trying to make it, oh, we're going on video. And I have to admit, I wasn't keen on going on video. I'm even, oh
God. I lost you while you're saying that. So your video went away.
I didn't want to be on video. And now I'm doing this interview. I was very, I'm going to have to, can we pause for a minute? Because my battery's going to die.
Okay.
So
let me
pause. Can we stop recording?
Okay. So, I actually have two questions. One is, are you worried about anybody in your family? I know you said you live alone, so I'm not going to ask you about a partner or children, but are you worried about anybody in your family right now?
My mom, who also lives alone, but she's older, so I worry about her when she goes to work. She's also an essential worker, works at Target and as you know, grocery stores and Target, those people are still working and they get exposed to the public on a daily basis. So, and she's older, and so I worry about her getting exposed because of her age.
Have you talked to her about her job?
Yeah, I have, and she says she does wear a mask. She wears gloves. She does stock, so she works in the early morning, and then it leaves early afternoon, like by noon or 1 o'clock, and then she's done for the day. So I hope that she's not exposed to that many people during those hours, and probably more with just employees in the stock room rather than the general public. But she has told me stories about talking to the general public, so I'm not sure. I think she has more exposure probably than I do. Or as much as I do, well, probably more than I do, because I just go out to the grocery store and then I'm back home. Or if I go out for a walk, she probably has more exposure to people than I do.
So once this is all over, do you have any idea what's the first thing you're going to do once we're able to go back out in the world like before?
Take a vacation. Get out of Dodge. Get on an airplane and travel to a beach somewhere. That's what I would like to do.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Evelia, thank you so much. I really appreciate you interviewing with me. This has been really an educational experience for me because my mind is not on the radar when it comes to children in foster care or children who are dealing with family separation that has nothing to do with documentation status. You know, this kind of family separation is really, in some cases, to protect the child. So I would really like to continue interviewing people within your line of work. So I'm probably going to connect with Mindy. And if
Okay.
there's anybody that you think would be a good candidate, let me know. So I'm going to
Okay.
shut off the recording, but I need to stay on with you so I can answer some of those other questions.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm stopping the recording.